The series begins with two kids, Max and Ain, heirs to two of the wealthiest families in Spain. From an early age, Max and Ain were inseparable, sharing most of their first life experiences together. As the years went by, their bond grew stronger until they decided to reveal their relationship to their families. One night, after celebrating Max's academic success, they went out under the influence of alcohol, and suddenly tragedy struck. Max lost control and caused the accident that ended the life of the girl he loved most, Ain. At just 19, Max was sentenced to prison for involuntary manslaughter. Life behind bars was brutal. Because of his family's wealth, he had to pay other inmates just to stay alive. Yet even money couldn't always protect him. He suffered every kind of abuse, and at one point, the prisoners locked him inside an industrial washing machine, running it for 16 agonizing minutes. When he emerged, Max felt his life was over. In that moment of despair, he realized he had already endured every type of pain imaginable, and strangely, that thought gave him strength. From then on, he swore that if he could stand up again, nothing in life would ever break him. That day marked the birth of a new Max. He started building his body, fighting back, and entering the prison's underground brawls. After winning 15 fights, he earned the respect of the other inmates. Then, while following the news about the looming threat of World War III, where NATO had seized a Russian submarine carrying nuclear warheads, Max's life suddenly changed again. A prison official entered his cell with news. The court had approved his appeal. Max was walking out of prison that very day. Max gets out of prison and is surprised to see his father, Raphael, waiting for him. Raphael's first question is about what Max is wearing, which confuses Max since he hasn't seen him in 3 years, and that's the first thing he asks. Raphael explains that he came to visit 3 times, but Max refused to see him. Max tells him he was struggling during that first period, and Raphael should have tried a 4th time, because maybe then he would have agreed to meet him. At that moment, fighter jets fly overhead, and Raphael tells Max that he spent weeks filing an appeal to get him released, because he wanted him by his side, and now they are going to hide underground. Max is shocked that his father wants to bury him in a hole the same day he got out of prison. He insists he won't go with him, blaming Raphael for ruining their relationship. Raphael pleads with him, saying he wants to save his life because the whole world is in crisis. He explains that the bunker is managed with connections to intelligence and the Ministry of Defense, and he begs Max to come with him. Max refuses at first, so Raphael tries to convince him further by telling him that his mother and grandmother are already there, as well as on his father, and this could be a chance to talk to him and heal the wound left by the accident. Max seems persuaded, and Raphael suggests that Max drive his motorcycle so he can feel free again. On the way, Raphael starts telling Max how he managed to get access to the bunker. He explains that he met a government official who connected him with the company running it, and everything was handled with extreme secrecy. He also assures Max that he invested millions in the place. Meanwhile, as they travel, people everywhere are abandoning the country, trying to escape to safer areas away from the threats of war and nuclear radiation. Raphael arrives at the airport and hears on the news that the civil aviation lockdown will begin at 1 p.m. He begs the pilot to take advantage of the remaining time and get them to the bunker. Meanwhile, we see Minerva, the woman in charge of the facility, speaking about the bunker, which they decided to call the Chimera Park. She says the bunker is a luxury refuge, and anyone lucky enough to secure a place for themselves and their families will be safe from disasters for the next 10 years. She begins explaining the rules, starting with the absolute prohibition of sharing any information about the bunker's location. If a war breaks out and relatives, neighbors, or colleagues discover there is a safe place underground, it would jeopardize the safety of everyone inside. Minerva then provides details about the bunker, which lies beneath a lake at a depth of 275 meters. She explains that her team spent 7 years building what has become the most secret refuge in the world. It was constructed inside a natural cavity that is 45 million years old, designed with 3 levels, housing 45 families, and ensuring safety without compromising on luxury. Raphael and Max finally reach the bunker, where a receptionist welcomes them and asks them to hand over their personal belongings and phones for safety reasons, since phones could be tracked and expose the location. They are then given special suits designated for bunker residents, equipped with meters to measure radiation levels and air quality, as well as wristbands to monitor vital signs. As Max enters, he is greeted by his mother Frida and his grandmother Victoria. When he asks about the man with them, his grandmother tells him it is Antonio, her nurse, whom she brought along to supervise her chemotherapy treatment. Max then enters the restaurant with his family, and Anne's sister Asia is shocked when she sees him. She begs her father Guillermo not to cause a scene. Guillermo stands up, approaches Max, and tells him he is glad Max has paid his debt to society and is now free. But Max insists he has not yet paid his real debt, believing Guillermo will never see him as anything other than the man who ended his daughter's life. He apologizes and tells him he will always carry the regret of what happened, hoping they can somehow leave the past behind. Guillermo places his hand on Max's shoulder, tells him he accepts, and invites them to have lunch together as they used to in the past. Asia looks stunned by what is happening, while Guillermo introduces them to Mimi, his wife. Asia then tells them her mother passed away 6 months after Anne because she couldn't bear the loss. Guillermo interrupts, insisting that his first wife died in a car accident, and then seats both families together for lunch. It becomes clear that Guillermo is upset, but trying to hide it, while Rafael is tense and struggling to keep his composure. Suddenly, Asia decides to confront Max, asking how he managed to escape the accident and leave her sister to die. Frida tries to calm her, explaining that they are trying to bring the families back together and live in peace. But Asia insists she cannot find peace until she hears the answer to her question. Max looks at his father as if Rafael holds the answer, then tells Asia that he truly loved Anne. Asia responds that if he had really loved her, he would never have left her to die, especially since he was the one driving and caused the accident. Max later goes to the gym, where he runs into Asia. He tells her he knows she has hated him her whole life and explains that hatred consumes the one who holds it, to the point where maybe she works out just because she cannot bear the weight of that hate inside her. Asia tells him she trains because exercise affects the nervous system, helping her forget pain and ease tension. Max is surprised by her knowledge and asks if she reads Wikipedia every day. Asia explains that she is studying medicine and asks if he came just to bother her before the end of the world. Max assures her he came to give her something important. He hands her Anne's phone, telling her he has kept it since the day of the accident, and when he learned she was here, he decided to give it to her so she could hold on to her sister's memories. Asia goes back to her room and begins watching the videos on Anne's phone, overwhelmed with happiness. Meanwhile, Guillermo is at the bar speaking with Rafael, telling him he cannot accept the idea of Max being there with them. Rafael advises him to adapt, the same way he had to adapt to prison life. Suddenly, a strange tremor shakes the bunker, alarms start blaring, and everyone receives an alert to move to the dome, the safest place. An explosion follows, and Asia rushes out looking for her father. She comes across Mimi, who is upset and refusing to move because she had a fight with Guillermo. Asia asks Frida to take Mimi to the dome while she continues to search for her father. Asia reaches the bar and finds her father injured, supported by Max and Rafael. She runs to him, hugs him in fear, but Guillermo reassures her that it is only a minor wound. Max explains they stopped the bleeding and disinfected the injury, and together Guillermo, Max, Rafael, and Asia head into the elevator to reach the dome. Guillermo deliberately pulls his hand off Max's shoulder to show he doesn't need his help. Suddenly, the elevator drops, but the safety system activates the brakes and saves them. When they reach the dome, they are shocked to see the screens displaying war scenes from all over the world. At that moment, Minerva arrives and informs them that a NATO base north of the bunker was hit by a nuclear strike, which is why they felt the explosion. She reassures them that the United Nations has called for a ceasefire, and the warring countries will most likely respect that decision. She then shows them live footage from outside the bunker, telling them they are now 312 meters underground, the safest point in the facility. Suddenly, they witness a nuclear explosion close to the bunker. The screens go black, and the power cuts out. Moments later, partial power returns, and Minerva tells them she is heading to the command center and will keep them updated on everything happening. A little later, Rafael decides to confess to Asia that he was the one who told Max to run after the accident. We flash back to the past, where we see Rafael telling Max that Anne had already died and urging him to escape into the forest and not return for 3 days. That way, they could justify what happened by claiming he suffered a concussion and got lost, framing it as a simple accident. But if he stayed, he would be charged with a crime, since he was driving drunk. Back in the present, Frida is stunned and asks Rafael why, after making a plan to save his son, he later betrayed him and testified against him in court. Rafael explains that he changed his mind because, at first, he believed he had to keep his son out of prison at any cost. But in court, he asked himself what kind of damage he would be causing his son with such a lie, and decided it was better for Max to take responsibility for what he did. He apologizes to Max for making him endure the suffering he went through in prison. After a while, Minerva comes in and informs them that they have lost contact with the outside world because the antenna that picks up satellite signals was destroyed by the nearby explosion. For that reason, the head of security, Luca, and his partner Cindy will go out to repair the damage and restore communication. She reassures everyone that the mission will be monitored with cameras so they can all watch what is happening outside. Everyone in the bunker follows Luca on the screens and is shocked when they see the scale of destruction caused by the nuclear bomb. The team continues monitoring as the outside temperature reaches 58 degrees Celsius, with radiation levels in the air steadily increasing. Luca approaches a burned-out car from the blast and finds 2 bodies inside. As time passes, the temperature climbs to 77 degrees, and radiation levels rise even higher. Luca notices that the surrounding forests are burning, and at that moment, Minerva orders him to return quickly and focus on fixing the antenna because he cannot be exposed to any more radiation. The temperature rises to 84 degrees, and the radiation continues increasing. As Luca tries to secure the device, his glove sticks to the metal handle because of the extreme heat, causing him to drop the equipment. Minerva communicates with him and advises him to remove the glove without tearing it. He quickly takes it off and re-enters the bunker, reporting that the glove has started to burn. Dr. Julia examines it and confirms that the glove was damaged, so they immediately turn off the cameras. Minerva then addresses the bunker residents, telling them that the situation outside is extremely dangerous. For now, they will remain in the dome, and staff will bring them blankets and food. She advises everyone to try to get some sleep. Minerva then goes to her team, delighted, and tells them the residents believed the act completely. They all begin to celebrate, and we realize that everything that happened was just a deception to isolate the residents from the outside world, while in reality, everything outside is stable, and there were no explosions at all. We flash back to the past and see Minerva with her team, explaining that their success depends on people believing in the play of the end of the world. Using modern technology, she managed to turn fabrication into reality, exploiting the idea of ongoing wars around the globe to launch their performance. We learn that everything was staged, from the people walking in the streets with bags pretending to flee, to Luca going outside and pretending he had been exposed to nuclear radiation. All the screens in the bunker were controlled by them. The news reports were fabricated, and even the tremors and explosions were simulated. She was assisted by her brother Zero, the film director Nano, and the rest of the team, each playing a role in this elaborate play. Back in the present, we see the bunker residents gathered in the dome as Dr. Julia checks on their health after the shock they went through during the supposed blast. At the same time, Max decides to take some food to his mother, and she tells him she appreciates everything he is doing to ease her suffering. Max then reminds her that Hiroshima was hit with a nuclear attack, yet still stands today, full of tourists, and that Chernobyl's reactor exploded with 7 tons of uranium inside, but now people visit the site to take pictures and paint on the walls. Max assures her that life goes on no matter what happens, and promises her that they will survive too. At that moment, Asia decides to go to the bathroom and secretly browses through Ainane's phone. Suddenly, she hears banging noises from the next stall, along with the sound of a woman choking. She rushes out and breaks the door, shocked to find a woman hanging by her neck, trying to end her life. Asia struggles to lift her and calls for help. A young man named Tirso, part of the bunker staff, arrives and helps her cut the wire, bringing the woman down. He calls for the doctor, and Asia notices the woman is not breathing, so she begins performing CPR. Julia arrives and assists Asia, and together they manage to revive the woman using a defibrillator. The first thing the woman does upon regaining consciousness is blame them for saving her. At that moment, Minerva speaks over the intercom, announcing that no aftershocks have been recorded since the explosion, meaning everyone can now return to their residential quarters. Julia goes back to the command center and tries to object to what is happening, pointing out that people are beginning to suffer from panic and distress. She tells Minerva that if she had known the consequences would be like this, she never would have agreed to join the operation. Minerva steps closer and tells her this is the most important plan she will ever carry out in her life, not just a job, and orders her to continue. She points at the screens and says that the wealthy are carrying the burden of the end of the world on their shoulders, and yet they keep moving forward. Now they will be shown proof that will terrify them into staying inside the bunker. She then takes Julia to show her the special effects they created on Luca's body to make it look as though he had been exposed to radiation. Julia grows even angrier, storms out, and leaves them behind. Raphael confronts Frida, blaming her for saying in the dome that she only agreed to marry him to escape her mother's mistreatment. Frida admits that the love between them is over and tells him she wants a divorce because she is in love with her yoga instructor. Raphael becomes upset and tries to convince her to stay with him, but Frida insists that his behavior is what destroyed their relationship. She decides to leave and goes to her mother's room. Raphael yells after her, accusing her of marrying him just to run away from her mother, only to now leave him and return to her. Frida ignores his words and walks away. Frustrated, Raphael decides to find something to eat to calm himself, but discovers there are no snacks left in the rooms. He goes to the restaurant and asks Tirso to give him any meal, explaining that he missed lunch because of his mother-in-law and couldn't eat the food served in the dome. Tirso tells him he must wait until morning because he cannot break the rules by giving out food. Raphael grows agitated, insisting he hasn't eaten since yesterday and is in a terrible state, unable to control himself unless he eats. At that moment, Julia observes him and realizes he is having a panic attack. She orders Minerva to send a young man named Heiko to the restaurant immediately. Back in the restaurant, Raphael loses control, breaks the rules, and starts devouring food desperately. Heiko enters and demands Raphael put the food down. When he refuses, Heiko shocks him with a taser until he loses consciousness. Max intervenes, telling Heiko he has 3 seconds to let go of his father. He begins counting, and when Heiko tries to shock him as well, Max manages to dodge the attack, seize the taser, and restrain him. Max then tells his father to take whatever he wants. The next day, Asia is watching the videos Max used to send Aine, and when she starts to feel emotions toward him, she decides to throw the phone in the trash. Later, security guards arrive at Mimi's room and ask her if her blood type is AB negative. When she says yes, they tell her to come with them. Max is watching and sees Asia following behind Mimi, trying to understand what is happening. One of the guards tells her Mimi is going to the hospital, but when Asia asks why, he insists they have orders not to speak and makes it clear she cannot go inside with her. At that moment, Max arrives, and when he sees the guards leaving, he takes Asia and hides with her near the hospital. He asks her to return Aine's phone, but Asia tells him she can't because she burned the memory card. Max is upset and explains that the memories on that phone belong to him and Aine, and he only gave it to her so she could be sure he truly loved her. Asia tells him that love is just an illusion that usually ends in disappointment. Max is surprised by the way she talks and realizes she has changed a lot over the past 2 years. Meanwhile, Julia is speaking with Mimi and 2 other bunker residents, explaining that they brought them there to draw blood because their colleague, whose glove had burned, now urgently needs a transfusion. Mimi is confused and reminds her that she had said he suffered no side effects from radiation. Julia admits she was wrong, and now he desperately needs blood. She then deliberately makes sure Mimi sees Luca in critical condition so she can carry the news back to the other residents. Mimi comes out in tears and tells Asia what she saw in the hospital, insisting that Luca was exposed to radiation and his life is ending. She asks Asia if she knows what that means, and Asia replies that it means they will never be able to leave the bunker. As the news spreads among the residents, fear and despair take over, while Minerva and her team celebrate. When Minerva notices Julia standing alone, upset, she approaches her and tries to calm her down. Julia lashes out, telling her that the woman who tried to take her own life could have died, and many residents are suffering panic attacks because of what they are doing. Julia insists she is no longer acting as a doctor by being part of this. Minerva tries to convince her that they are helping the residents and that, in time, they will adapt because human beings are strong and capable of adjusting to any circumstances. Julia tells her she has made her decision and is leaving. Minerva tries to talk her out of it, but Julia refuses and promises she won't tell anyone. Minerva replies that she doesn't trust her because she keeps changing her mind and tries to stop her from leaving. Julia then threatens that if Minerva doesn't let her go, she will tell the residents the truth. At that moment, Zero arrives and decides to finish Julia off. We then flash back to the past, where Minerva introduces her team to Guillermo, saying he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, inheriting shares from his grandfather worth $3.77 billion. She explains that he now manages 64 companies in more than 40 countries, and if he were to lose even 1% of his fortune, he would never notice. And if that 1% were converted into 50-euro banknotes, it would fill 4 large trucks. Minerva tells her team that she despises the rich because they deceive the poor with the American dream, where career advancement is painfully slow, and those born poor stay poor their entire lives. If they try to protest their poverty, they go out to demonstrate but are forced to return home to keep working. She explains that the only revolutions that truly changed things were the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution because they wiped everything out. Today, she says, "It is impossible for anyone to start such revolutions because the masses have been tamed." She adds that while they are earning $1,000 a month, Guillermo managed to make $11 billion last year alone. Back in the present, we see Cindy entering to inform Minerva that a horrific incident has occurred. Minerva goes to the dome with Cindy and finds Julia's body. Cindy tells her that Julia had been acting strangely the previous night and did not celebrate with them. Zero then assures everyone he was reviewing the security footage and saw Julia enter the dome screaming, clearly having a panic attack. One of their colleagues, Garcia, asks to see the footage. We then see Zero playing the recordings, showing Julia breaking down before Minerva reached her. Zero tells them that 4 minutes later, she went out into the hallway and took her own life. Garcia then asks to see the rest of the footage. Zero pointedly asks him if he wants to watch it out of curiosity or because he doesn't trust him. Garcia replies that he no longer trusts anyone, and the entire team begins urging Zero to keep playing the video. Minerva steps in and scolds them for not respecting her grief over her friend, accusing Garcia of sowing discord at the moment when they most need unity. Garcia tells her they were united and accepted this crazy idea because they trusted her and her brother, and he explains that he wants to verify the correctness of his decision to trust them. Garcia plays the video and confirms that Julia ended her life, and it appears Zero was able to tamper with the footage. After that, Minerva decides to hold a meeting for all the residents and informs them of Luca's death due to radiation exposure and Julia's death by suicide following recent events when she felt hopeless. She reminds them that she had warned them that despair is their greatest enemy and announces that they will move from the quarantine phase to the permanent lockdown phase. Therefore, they will begin rationing consumption. She confronts Raphael about breaking the rules by entering the food storage and stealing food, and about his son helping him and attacking a security guard. She tells them she will not tolerate what happened because safety is her top priority in these circumstances. Minerva approaches Max and orders him to bring the stun gun to her office within 10 minutes. We flash back to Minerva's team asking how all these people will disappear without anyone noticing, how their friends and relatives will not report their disappearance to the police, and Minerva explains she arranged everything. All the characters who entered the bunker recorded videos claiming they were going on a trip and then turned off their phones or said they were traveling to a remote area with no coverage, which is why their phones were taken before they entered. She tells them that Zero developed a robot named Roxana over 11 years, and that this robot will help them a lot because it will monitor all residents, learn all the details of their personal lives, even their private matters, and will impersonate them. If necessary, it will answer their phones as if they themselves were answering. In the present, Guillermo receives a call from his office manager, Oswaldo, urgently asking him to answer. Roxana immediately gathers information about Oswaldo to craft the right response and speaks to him as if she were Guillermo, telling him that he is on a trip and had asked not to be contacted for 3 weeks. Yet Oswaldo is calling after only 3 days. She warns him that if it is not something truly important, Guillermo will punish him when he returns. Meanwhile, Asia goes down to the waste disposal area with Tirso to search for the phone after convincing him she lost her sister's bracelet and needs to find it. Though it breaks the rules, Tirso agrees to help. Asia enters the waste area and begins searching for the phone when suddenly the compactor starts. Tirso warns her they have only 1 minute to get out, but she begs for a few more seconds. She manages to retrieve the phone just before the compactor comes down on them. Once outside, Tirso tells her he saw her take the phone. She tries to lie, saying she was looking for the bracelet, but Tirso insists he saw her and scolds her for lying and risking their lives. Asia then admits she was searching for her late sister's phone, which still had her last photos. Tirso asks why she threw it away in the first place, and Asia explains that instead of thinking about her friends outside the bunker, she kept watching the videos her sister's boyfriend had sent her, even laughing, while he didn't care about anything happening outside and only thought about food, despite being the one responsible for her sister's death and her family's destruction. Tirso asks if her sister's boyfriend is in the bunker, and Asia reveals that Max was her sister's boyfriend. She admits that whenever she watches those videos, she forgets everything and finds herself laughing. Upset, she asks what she should do. Tirso advises her either to reconcile with him and talk normally, or ignore him and avoid seeing him altogether. Asia confirms that ignoring him is the best solution, and she truly will avoid him. At that moment, Heiko enters the gym and tells Max that the deadline is over and he must return the stun gun. Max insists he can't find it and suspects he dropped it when leaving the restaurant. Heiko warns him that he is ready to search the entire bunker, and if he discovers Max is hiding it, he will detain him in the cellar, which is reserved for people like him. He advises Max not to waste time and hand it over. Max replies that he doesn't want to go to the cellar and admits the stun gun is with him, but he won't return it unless they face each other in a fight, and he scores 10 points. Heiko raises the stakes, suggesting they make it 10,000 hits. Max tells him he comes from a place where being unarmed could mean the end of his life, and that is why he decided to keep the stun gun, because he doesn't know what might happen in the future. He tells Heiko to go back and report to Minerva. Instead, Heiko chooses to fight him. During the fight, Heiko contacts one of his colleagues, ordering him to stop what's happening, but Heiko ignores the command, leading his colleague to send another guard to break up the fight and prevent trouble. In that moment, Max takes advantage, strikes Heiko, and causes him to bleed. Asia is watching, shocked by what is happening. Heiko is rushed to the hospital, but Garcia discovers his pulse has stopped. Minerva enters, shaken and saddened, still unable to recover from Julia's death. Later, Asia approaches Max and asks him what happened. Max tells her he fought with the guard. Asia notices his wound is deep and tells him it needs stitches. Max, stunned, says he heard a cracking sound when he landed the final blow on the guard. He insists he has been in many prison fights, but never heard that sound before, and now he is terrified because Heiko collapsed like a lifeless body with his eyes open. Max admits he doesn't want to be the reason another life ends. Asia then tells him his shoulder is dislocated and she needs to put it back in place. On the other side, Heiko's pulse returns, and Minerva asks what is happening. Cindy admits she doesn't really know since she's not a nurse, but suggests he may have been clinically dead and insists a doctor needs to see him. Garcia proposes taking him outside the bunker, but Minerva refuses, saying it's impossible. Garcia argues that time is not on their side, and Heiko could die unless a doctor examines him, as he might need brain surgery. They consider offering a huge payment to bring a doctor into the bunker, but Ciro explains that it wouldn't work, because once a doctor enters, he cannot leave. Meanwhile, Asia is trying to treat Max's shoulder. She attempts once and fails, and Max asks if she has studied orthopedic surgery at university. She tells him she's still about to start her 5th year, currently in her 4th, but assures him not to worry because she knows the skeletal structure in detail. She decides to try again, but Max warns her she could damage a nerve and paralyze his entire arm. Asia reassures him that won't happen and reminds him of his own words about Hiroshima, where surely there were no fully equipped hospitals either. At that moment, Minerva arrives and tells Asia she's needed for an emergency case. Asia ignores her and finishes what she's doing, pulling Max's arm back into place and fixing his dislocated shoulder. She then quickly leaves with Minerva and arrives at the hospital. Asia starts thinking about why Heiko's pulse is dropping and realizes he may not be breathing properly, causing low oxygen in his blood. She decides to inject him with a substance to raise oxygen levels, and shortly after, Heiko begins to regain consciousness. Asia reassures him that he suffered a concussion and must rest properly. Minerva goes into her office to meet Max and tries to play with his nerves, telling him that he ended someone's life, though they managed to save him. Max insists he was only defending himself, but Minerva replies that it doesn't matter. What matters is that her experiment succeeds, and she learns what happens when a wealthy man is imprisoned. Max tells her he can give her the result right now because he already experienced prison. He says this place feels like a correctional facility. They wear uniforms. There are 73 cameras, an isolation cell, and their phones were confiscated. Minerva then takes the stun gun from him and shocks him until his strength collapses. She orders her assistant to stitch his wound. Afterward, Garcia decides to play a new game with the residents. He gathers a group of them and convinces them they are the closest to a working radio device. He instructs them to send distress calls in every language to try to reach the outside world and to report their coordinates if they get any response. Even though the equipment is not connected to any real radio, the residents believe him and desperately try to send the calls. Meanwhile, Nano organizes a group therapy session for some of the residents. Raphael begins to speak, recounting how when he woke up, he asked Roxana to make him coffee and play some music. He was shocked when she played the exact music he loves, making him feel as though she was personally connecting with him. But he then realized it was only because he had requested that music before, and she was merely repeating it. That made him certain Frida had treated him the same way for the past 20 years, like a robot, just going along with him, saying she loved him when she did not. Overcome with sadness, he breaks down in despair. Nano then asks Guillermo to share as well. Guillermo tells them he has a list of his dearest friends outside and fears they may already be dead. He begins blaming himself, saying he spent his life amassing wealth but now cannot enjoy it, and if he had chosen to give up part of it, he might have saved his friends. He turns to Raphael, telling him that he is now his only friend and that he sees him as the better man, because when Max caused the accident that killed Anne, Raphael chose to uphold justice and allowed his own son to go to prison. Guillermo assures Raphael he will never abandon him. Later, Asia examines Max's wound and tells him he will need 5 stitches. Suddenly, Max begins to hallucinate, seeing Ain. It becomes clear that Asia is starting to develop feelings for him, though she is unhappy about it and decides to leave without finishing the stitches. After that, Guillermo receives a message from Oswaldo threatening that if he doesn't reply, he will contact the Philippine ambassador in Spain, find out Guillermo's location, and travel to meet him. We learn that before entering the bunker, Guillermo told Oswaldo he was going on a trip to the Philippines. Minerva and her team become visibly tense, fearing Oswaldo will actually travel, discover Guillermo never arrived in the Philippines, and report his disappearance, ruining their entire plan. They decide to use artificial intelligence to simulate a fake call with Oswaldo in Guillermo's voice. Their plan succeeds, and Oswaldo is convinced he is really speaking with Guillermo. He then asks Guillermo what he is doing in BG3, but Roxana is unable to interpret the meaning of the abbreviation. Minerva decides to cut the call until they can find an answer. At that moment, Max goes into the room where Asia is and asks her why she left him before she finished stitching his wound. Asia tells him bluntly that she hates him and cannot get past the fact that he caused her sister's death and destroyed her family. While he was in prison living his life as if it were a holiday, she was suffering. She says she left because she can't accept him or the idea of him being in the same place with her. She even hoped his life would end in prison rather than see him ruin her life again. Back in the present, Minerva grows anxious, feeling that everything she planned is about to collapse. Because of Oswaldo's question, she still can't answer. We flash back. As a child, Ciro was constantly bullied and Minerva protected him. One day they came home and their mother was gone. 2 days later, they found a note from her saying she was not fit to be a mother. When social services arrived and took them to a care home, Minerva pretended to be aggressive so they would not separate her from her brother. Over time, Minerva realized that when they grew up, they would be outcasts in society, and the only way out would be academic scholarships, so she forced herself to study. Ciro, at 24, earned 3 degrees in systems engineering, physics, and mathematics. Minerva earned 2 degrees, 1 in architectural engineering and 1 in civil engineering. After graduation, Minerva worked on massive construction projects while receiving a meager salary and bonuses that were never enough to buy a house. One day, she decided to design a refuge where she could lock up the rich and get money from them in return, make them fund the whole con, and in exchange take much more money from them. Now her brilliant plan is at risk of collapse because she failed to interpret the meaning of the abbreviation BG. Roxana manages to extract data from Max's phone and discovers that BG3 is the name of a purebred English horse worth more than 40 million euros. Minerva decides to take the risk and contacts Oswaldo through the AI system, asking him to sell the horse. Oswaldo replies that he needs Guillermo's safe password to access the horse's documents in order to sell it. Roxana fails to retrieve the password, so they decide to play along and instruct Oswaldo to go to Guillermo's house the next day, where Guillermo will call him and provide the password. Minerva then contacts Ingrid, the bunker staff member whom Guillermo has been trying to flirt with, and orders her to find a way to obtain Guillermo's safe password. Meanwhile, Max enters the gym where he had fought Heiko and starts dancing to release the pain caused by Asia's words. By chance, he finds Heiko's earpiece, takes it, and discovers they are spying on everyone in the bunker. He hears his father's voice through it. Minerva immediately orders her team to cut the feed, and Cindy comes in to take the earpiece from him, noticing that his wound is bleeding. She takes him to the hospital to stop the bleeding. On the other side, Ingrid tries to get closer to Guillermo to earn his trust and access his safe password. Raphael is with them at the bar when suddenly Max knocks on the door, asking his father to let him in. Minerva panics, fearing he will ruin everything. Max makes it clear he knows they are being watched. When he asks his father about his injury, Guillermo tells him he fought with one of the guards and that Asia stitched his wound. Annoyed, Guillermo decides to leave. Minerva quickly tells Ingrid to stay with Guillermo at all costs. Ingrid goes after him and suggests they enter the director's office to have a drink and continue their conversation. Minerva notices that Mimi, Frida, and Victoria are on their way to her office, so she contacts Ingrid and urges her to get the safe password quickly before Mimi arrives. Ingrid tries to convince Guillermo that she is a face-reading expert who can tell if he is lying or truthful just by his expressions. She suggests he answer 5 questions in writing without her seeing his responses. Meanwhile, Minerva deliberately stalls the elevator carrying Mimi to give Ingrid time to complete her plan. Mimi eventually forces the elevator open and makes her way out, but just before she reaches the office, Ingrid manages to obtain Guillermo's safe password. At that moment, Mimi walks in, shocked to see Guillermo with Ingrid, and decides to end their relationship. Guillermo returns to his room, only to discover Asia holding Ain's phone. He storms out in anger, convinced that Max gave it to her to get closer. Furious, he attacks Max, blaming him for An's death and for his wife taking her own life afterward, swearing he will never let him near Asia. Guillermo beats him violently, while Max refuses to fight back. At that moment, Frida arrives and strikes Guillermo to save her son. When Max leaves, Frida confronts Guillermo for attacking him. Guillermo apologizes, explaining that Mimi leaving him pushed him over the edge. Frida then steps closer and tells him she has already separated from Raphael. And since he has separated from Mimi, the time has come to reveal their relationship after hiding it for 20 years. Later, we see Minerva and her team debating what to do if the password turns out to be wrong. Ciro suggests having Guillermo lash out at Oswaldo, telling him they will never agree to sell the horse because it reminds them of his daughter, and then end the call, ordering him never to contact them again. If the password is correct, however, they can gain Oswaldo's trust and move on to the second stage of their con. Frida returns and pretends to comfort Mimi, trying to convince her to accept her breakup with Guillermo, just as she accepted her own separation from Raphael. Mimi tells her it's different. She never loved Raphael the way she loved Guillermo, and leaves, distressed and heartbroken. Meanwhile, Asia goes to the gym and meets Max, apologizing for what her father did, explaining that he suddenly walked in and took the phone from her. Max accuses her and her family of lacking the courage to move on from the tragedy. He tells her he hates her because she never accepted his love for her sister, always building a world for herself without happiness and dismissing their love as superficial simply because she couldn't live a story like theirs. Instead, she convinced herself that her worth came only from studying since she never learned to enjoy life. Max steps closer and tells her he knows she hates him because he reminds her of the greatest love she ever witnessed, and one she failed to live for herself. Asia leaves in tears, feeling as though her whole life suddenly made sense. She realizes Max was right, that she had spent her life denying love, and that deep down she had always loved him. With the world on the brink of ending, she had wished she could go on, not understanding her feelings, because now she knew he hated her. At the same time, Oswaldo arrives at Guillermo's house. Minerva's plan succeeds, and he manages to open the safe with the help of the AI-generated Guillermo. Minerva and her team celebrate their victory, having unlocked the safe using the AI copy. They then move on to the next stage of the scheme, making the Guillermo copy instruct Oswaldo to travel to Bangkok and purchase a company called Unicorn. It is revealed that Unicorn is a shell group of companies invented by Minerva as part of her con to seize the wealth of the millionaires inside the bunker. Once all the companies are sold, they expect to raise about 800 million euros. Nano later discovers Mimi collapsed unconscious in the dome, and they rush her to the hospital, calling Asia to treat her. Asia goes to Mimi and asks what happened. Mimi says her whole body hurts, she can't focus, and her vision is blurred. Asia tries to calm her down long enough to make a diagnosis. Minerva tells Asia that Julia created a complete medical evidence database, and all Asia has to do is review the information to diagnose the case. After examining Mimi, Asia realizes she needs dialysis, but the bunker doesn't have a dialysis machine. At that moment, Guillermo arrives, and Asia blocks him from entering because Mimi told her she doesn't want to see him. Guillermo asks about Mimi's condition, and Asia tells him she has a rare liver disease and needs dialysis. But since the bunker has no machine, she will use antibiotics, and if the treatment fails, Mimi could die within 72 hours. Guillermo goes to the bar, devastated. He meets Max and apologizes for hitting him, explaining he was confused because of his breakup with Mimi. He tells Max he is heartbroken that she is so ill and needs dialysis, and he fears he will watch his second wife die. Max promises him he will find a solution. Max then goes to the hospital and meets Asia, asking her to step into the bathroom with him. Inside, he starts speaking to her in messages, asking her to play along so the bunker guards who are spying on them will believe they're in a relationship. He explains that he learned from Minerva there is a hospital nearby and wants to get out so he can save Mimi because he wants to help her father and keep him from losing his wife again. Asia tries to cooperate with him and tells him she agrees to help. Max goes back to his room and informs Raphael that Asia will be coming to him soon. He asks him not to question any details and not to say anything to Guillermo. Raphael then decides to confess his own secret. He tells Max that the reason he testified against him in court was because Guillermo had threatened to kill him if Max didn't go to prison. Meanwhile, Frida goes to the gym to meet Guillermo and tells him she is ready to make their relationship public. Guillermo admits he wishes the same, but says he has other priorities in his life. He believes his daughter comes first, then his friendships, and that's why he doesn't plan to sacrifice his friendship with Raphael for love. At the same time, Asia arrives at Max's room. Max pretends they are dancing and attaches speakers to their bracelets so no one can overhear them. They begin to talk, and Max tells her that if he is going to move Mimi to the hospital, it will take 4 hours, and he wants to carry some form of radiation antidote to survive outside. Asia tells him they don't know what the outside temperature is or the current radiation levels, and he might not even be able to cross the bridge that leads to the bunker. Max explains that's why he needs her help. Asia, excited to hear his plan, promises to support him. She also apologizes for what she said to him earlier, admitting she could never truly hate him, especially after learning he was willing to risk exposure to radiation just to save Mimi. She confesses that she never really knew how to enjoy life, but now she feels a strong desire to live happily, even if it seems strange to say that inside a bunker. Asia asks Max to tell her his plan so she can help. Max explains that the bunker must have a hidden emergency staircase with no signs pointing to it, but he has already figured out where it is. He wants her to distract the guards and the bunker staff so he can escape. Asia tells him she knows how to make a bomb and thinks it's the perfect way to create a diversion. Max then tells her the final step of their plan. They must cut the power to the bunker to disable the electronic security system. While Max works on shutting down the system, Oswaldo arrives in Bangkok, about to purchase the fake company the AI is trying to convince him is real to carry out Minerva's scam. Suddenly, the call disconnects, and Oswaldo notices a strange name on his screen, Roxana. Suspicious, he decides to walk away from the deal and return to Spain, leaving a message for Guillermo explaining his decision. Moments later, the AI manages to reconnect and convinces Oswaldo to stay the night in a hotel and resume the deal the next day. Before the security system fully restarts, Max stages a fight with Heiko so Asia can steal an earpiece from the security room. Heiko loses control and taunts Max by saying he is involved with his mother. Enraged, Max nearly kills him, but Asia intervenes, trying to convince him that Heiko only said that to provoke him. Shaken, Max goes to the bar and confronts Frida, asking her why she never visited him in prison. She admits she stayed away because she had loved Guillermo since they were children and couldn't accept the idea that Max had taken his daughter's life and caused him such unbearable pain. Max breaks down, telling Frida he always thought she avoided visiting him in prison because she didn't want to cry seeing him locked up. Frida tries to explain that her feelings for Guillermo overpowered her maternal instinct, but Max tells her she's an even worse version of his grandmother because she's more selfish. Shattered, Max walks out and goes to Asia, visibly broken. She tries to comfort him, promising she will always stand by his side. Max returns to his room, determined to face reality. He tells his father that Frida has loved Guillermo for 28 years and deceived them all this time. Back in his room, he decides to smash the bracelet so no one can overhear him and Asia. Pretending they're in a relationship, he tells Asia he plans to leave at dawn. Meanwhile, Frida lashes out at Guillermo, forcing him to kneel, obey her, and promise to announce their relationship publicly. But when she leaves, she is stunned to find Raphael standing there. He has heard everything. Raphael confronts Guillermo, revealing that his wife had called him minutes before taking her own life. She suspected his affair with Frida and asked Raphael if Guillermo loved her. Raphael told her the truth. Guillermo loved his mistress more than his wife, because once he secured a relationship, he lost all interest in it. They accuse Guillermo of being the reason for his wife's death, but Raphael insists he freed her from the pain of being with him. She had been taking large amounts of antidepressants just to cope with his constant betrayals. At the same time, Minerva arranges a night out for Oswaldo. Ingrid meets him, gets acquainted, and joins him at a wild party, intentionally making him drink heavily. Minerva's plan is to get Oswaldo so drunk that when he signs the contract, he won't be focused enough to realize the company is fake. A few minutes before the meeting, Oswaldo receives a call from Guillermo, telling him he agreed with the company director on 88 million euros and asking him to go sign the contract and transfer the money. Meanwhile, Asia continues with the plan alongside Max. We see them assembling the bomb. On the other side, Minerva watches Oswaldo arrive at the company and meet the director. She decides to trick him into increasing the amount. A young man enters and offers the director €890 million to buy the company. So Oswaldo raises his bid to $900 million. Oswaldo signs the contract and the transfer begins. At that moment, Asia cuts the electronic system again to disable the surveillance cameras, and they have 2 minutes and 40 seconds before the system comes back online. They use that time to attach the bomb they built to the power panel so it will explode from heat. At the same time, the €90 million arrives in Minerva's account. She's busy and unconcerned with what's happening in the bunker. Suddenly, the bomb explodes and the power goes out. Max seizes the chance to leave via the emergency stairwell without anyone seeing him or knowing his destination. While Max is on his way to the exit door, Asia rushes back to the panel to reconnect the wire and restore power. At that moment, Heiko bursts in, points a gun at her, and orders her to come with him. Meanwhile, Ingrid calls Ciro to tell him that Oswaldo's plane has taken off. Ciro tells her to return and hide all the evidence she left behind. Oswaldo is shocked on the plane when he sees an advertisement showing the actress who pretended to be Ingrid's mother and realizes she is an actress. He begins to piece things together and understands he has been the victim of a massive scam, so he orders the pilot to turn back immediately. Heiko interrogates Asia and discovers she was the one who shut down the electronic system, demanding to know why she caused the explosion. Just then, Minerva interrupts, telling Asia that Mimi has suffered a heart attack and she needs her immediately to try to save her. Heiko insists to Minerva that Max is behind everything, though he can't understand why Max wants to leave after they convinced everyone about the nuclear explosion. Minerva explains that Max doesn't believe them and orders Heiko to move quickly to bring him back. Asia rushes to Victoria's room and discovers she gave Mimi massive doses of painkillers and allowed her to drink large amounts of alcohol. Furious, Asia throws them out and tries to resuscitate Mimi with a defibrillator. Meanwhile, Oswaldo arrives at the supposed company headquarters only to find it empty. No staff, no offices. He calls Guillermo, asking about Chimera Park after seeing its documents in his safe when he opened it. Ciro tries to distract him by claiming they belong to Mimi, but Oswaldo presses further, asking Guillermo to recall the nickname he had for him back in college. When Guillermo fails to answer, Oswaldo realizes the person is fake and that he's been scammed. He decides to contact the police. Back at the bunker, Max reaches the final exit gate. Asia contacts him, telling him Mimi has died and there's no reason to leave. Max insists he's leaving for himself, explaining that seeing his family again destroyed him, and he believes there is more hope outside than inside, even if there really was nuclear radiation. Asia then confesses that she has loved him since childhood, seeing him as the only refuge she could run to. Though terrified of the radiation, she admits she can still feel love and hope for life. Max tells her he discovered her true self inside the bunker and that she is the most beautiful thing left in the world. He promises her that if life exists outside, he will come back for her. Meanwhile, Oswaldo tries to call the police to report the scam, but Ingrid and her partner catch him, kill him, and stage it to look like he collapsed on his own. Finally, Max opens the bunker's exit door, nervous and afraid, but when the light floods in, he sees no trace of nuclear dust, the supposed fallout Minerva and her team had spent all this time trying to make them believe was real.